My impossible paradise was built on a mother's dismissive laugh, a laugh I hadn't heard in 5 years, until today, when she stood in my lobby, ready to claim her share of everything I refused to crawl for. The morning air here always smells the same, a mix of salt from the ocean, jasmine from the hedgerows, and the clean, earthy scent of damp soil from the pre-dawn watering. It's the smell of peace. It's the smell of a life I built from absolute scratch, a life that was supposed to be impossible. From my office, which is really more of a glass-walled bungalow perched on a cliff, I can see the entire resort. The Azure Serenity, I called it. A little on the nose, maybe. But it's what I craved for so long. Below me, a dozen private villas with their own infinity pools dot the landscape, seamlessly blending into the lush greenery. Guests are probably just waking up, stepping onto their private balconies to watch the sunrise paint the Pacific. I built this. Me. The boy who was told he'd never amount to anything. 5 years ago, I didn't have a cent to my name. I had a business plan scribbled on a napkin, a heart full of desperate hope, and a mother who looked at me with a unique blend of pity and disgust. I remember the last time I saw her like it was yesterday. I was standing in the immaculate beige living room of her suburban house, the one she was so proud of. My brother, Mark, the golden child, had just bought her a new car, and she couldn't stop talking about it. I had come to ask for a small loan, just a few $1,000s to get my initial proposal to investors. I wasn't asking for a handout. I was asking for a lifeline, a single thread of belief from my own family. She didn't even let me finish. She let out this short, sharp laugh, a sound that could curdle milk. "A boutique resort? You?" she said, looking me up and down as if I were something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Alex, be realistic. Your brother is a senior associate at a law firm. He has a real career. You drift. This is just another one of your silly little dreams. You need to grow up and get a real job before you end up on the street." I tried to explain, to show her my research, the market analysis, the passion that was burning a hole in my chest. She just waved a dismissive hand. "I'm not throwing good money after bad," she declared, her voice cold as ice. "Mark is the one we invested in, and look how that paid off. You should learn from him. Don't come to me with your fantasies again. And for God's sake, don't come crawling back here when this inevitably blows up in your face." That was it. That was the last straw in a lifetime of being told I was second best, that I was a disappointment. The words "crawling back" echoed in my head for months. I walked out of that beige house, got into my beat-up car, and drove until the state line disappeared in my rearview mirror. I sold my car for a plane ticket, slept on couches, worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, and clawed my way up. I found one investor who saw the fire in my eyes, and his belief was all the fuel I needed. I poured every ounce of my blood, sweat, and rage into building Azure Serenity, and I never looked back. No calls on birthdays, no texts on holidays. 5 years of absolute, deafening, beautiful silence. My phone buzzed on the polished teak desk, pulling me from the memory. It was Maria, my front desk manager. Her voice was tight, stressed. "Mr. Reyes, you have a visitor at the main gate. She's not on the guest list, but she's being very insistent." I sighed. "We occasionally got influencers or looky-loos trying to get in. Tell her we're fully booked in private property, Maria. You know the drill." There was a pause. "Sir." "She says she's your mother." A cold dread, an emotion I hadn't felt in years, washed over me, chilling me to the bone despite the tropical heat. My knuckles went white as I gripped the edge of my desk. My sanctuary, my fortress of peace, was about to be breached. I told Maria I was coming. I walked the stone path from my office to the grand open-air lobby, my heart hammering against my ribs. And there she was. She looked older, her face etched with lines of worry that weren't there before, her expensive-looking handbag clutched in her hands like a shield. She was scanning the lobby, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and something else, appraisal. Like she was sizing up a property she was about to acquire. She spotted me, and her face broke into a wide, beaming smile, as if we'd just seen each other last week for a pleasant Sunday brunch. All the old anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it all came roaring back. I stopped a few feet away from her, my face a stony mask. I wasn't going to make this easy. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low and devoid of any warmth. She just chuckled, that same sharp, dismissive sound from 5 years ago, but this time it was coated in a thick layer of false sweetness. She took a step closer, gesturing vaguely at the stunning ocean view behind me, at the immaculate architecture, at my entire life's work. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Alex," she said with a wave of her hand. Then she looked me directly in the eye, her smile unwavering, and delivered the line that shattered my 5 years of peace. "This is a lovely place you've built for me, sweetie. I've already picked out my villa, the one with the ocean view, of course." The words hung in the humid air between us, so absurd, so monumentally arrogant, that for a moment I was speechless. A part of my brain was actually searching for the punchline, waiting for her to break into laughter and reveal this was some kind of twisted, tone-deaf joke, but her expression remained one of serene, unshakable entitlement. My shock quickly curdled into a cold, hard rage that settled deep in my gut. I took a slow breath, forcing my voice to remain level. "I think you're mistaken," I said, the words coming out clipped and precise. "This is a business. The villas are for paying guests. You are not a paying guest." She tisked, as if I were a silly child who didn't understand the rules of a game she had invented. "Don't be difficult, Alex. We're family. Of course, I'm not a guest. This is my son's place. It's practically mine. Now, I saw the Villa del Sol on your website, number 7. The corner unit with the wraparound terrace? That one will do just fine. I'll need the staff to help with my bags." She actually started to turn, looking for a bellhop as if the matter was settled. I stepped in front of her, blocking her path. The 5 years of silence, of struggle, of building this life without a single word of support from her, coalesced into a wall of resolve inside me. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it echoed in the cavernous lobby. "You will not be staying here. You are not welcome here. You need to leave." Her smile finally faltered. Her eyes narrowed. The sweet doting mother facade dissolved, revealing the cold, sharp woman I remembered so vividly. "What did you just say to me?" she whispered, her voice dangerously low. "After everything I've done for you? I raised you, I clothed you, I fed you, and now that you've finally managed to stumble into some money, you're going to turn your back on your own mother?" I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was dry and bitter, like scraping rust off old metal. "Everything you've done for me? You told me my dreams were silly fantasies. You told me I was a disappointment. You told me, and I quote, 'Don't come crawling back here when this inevitably blows up in your face.' Well, look around." I spread my arms wide, gesturing to the paradise she was standing in. "This didn't blow up in my face, and I'm not crawling. So why are you?" That hit a nerve. Her face crumpled, the anger replaced by a sudden, theatrical wave of desperation. Tears welled in her eyes, the kind she could summon on command. "You don't understand what's happened," she sobbed, reaching out to grab my arm. I flinched away from her touch. "Everything is gone, Alex. Everything." I just stared at her, unmoved. "What about Mark?" I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. "The good investment. Isn't your golden boy supposed to be taking care of you?" Her breath hitched, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine, unscripted pain in her eyes. "Mark. His firm went under. A bad case. Some legal trouble. He lost his license. They took the house, Alex, the cars. Everything we had is gone. We have nowhere else to go. We're ruined." The story tumbled out of her in a pathetic rush, a litany of failures that were supposed to evoke my sympathy. but all I felt was a grim, hollow vindication. She had placed all her bets on one son while casting the other aside, and her horse had broken its leg. "So you came here," I said, piecing it together. "The son you wrote off, the failure with the silly dreams. I'm your backup plan, your emergency fund." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I'm your mother," she shrieked, her voice rising, attracting the attention of my staff and a few guests who were lingering in the lobby. "You have a duty." "My duty?" I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a low growl. "My duty ended 5 years ago in your beige living room when you laughed in my face. I owe you nothing. This paradise was built on your disbelief. Every stone here was laid with the memory of you telling me I would fail. So no, you cannot have a piece of it." I turned to my manager. "Maria, please call a taxi. Take my mother to the airport. She can buy a ticket to wherever she needs to go." Maria nodded, looking relieved to have a clear directive, and moved toward the phone. My mother looked at me, her face a mask of utter disbelief and fury. She was losing. For the first time in her life, she had no power over me. I turned my back on her, a final act of dismissal, and started walking back toward my office, my sanctuary. Then I heard her scream my name. "Alex!" I stopped but didn't turn around. Her voice was ragged, stripped of all its manipulation and artifice, leaving only raw panic. "You can't do this. I'm not leaving. I sold the last of my jewelry to get the plane tickets for us. We have nothing left. He's waiting for me, Alex. He's waiting in the taxi right now." A cold spike of adrenaline shot through me. "He?" I turned around slowly. Her face was pale, her hand pointing a trembling finger toward the resort's main gate. "Your brother is out there. He's in the taxi with all our bags. We have nowhere else to go. Do you hear me? Nowhere." I followed her gaze, past the fountains and the flaming torches that lined the entryway. There, just beyond the ornate iron gates, sat a single taxi van. Its rear door was open, revealing a mountain of mismatched suitcases and cardboard boxes piled precariously inside. And through the front passenger window, I could just make out a slumped, hollowed-out silhouette. The ghost of the golden child, waiting at the gates of the brother he'd always been told he was better than. The world seemed to shrink until it was just the three of us, suspended in a tableau of past sins and present desperation. My staff stood frozen, Maria hovering by the phone with a look of profound discomfort. Guests who had been admiring the lobby's waterfall now pretended to be engrossed in their phones, but I could feel their eyes on us. The pristine tranquility of my resort had been shattered. I looked from my mother's frantic, pleading face to the gate, to the silhouette of the man who had effortlessly coasted through life on the privilege I was always denied. A bitter irony washed over me. The two people who had pushed me out, who had told me to sink or swim on my own, were now drowning at the edge of my island. Without a word, I began to walk. My footsteps were loud and deliberate on the polished stone floor, each one an echo of the day I walked out of her house 5 years ago. My mother scrambled to keep up, her heels clicking frantically behind me. "He's so ashamed, Alex," she whispered, her voice a conspiratorial hiss. "He didn't even want to come. I had to drag him. But what else could we do? The shame of it all. His wife left him, you know. Took the children. Said she couldn't be married to a failure." Every word was a carefully chosen barb designed to prick my conscience, to leverage some forgotten familial bond, but my conscience was calloused over. I felt nothing but a cold, clinical curiosity. I needed to see him. I needed to look into the eyes of the man my entire life had been measured against and see what failure looked like on him. As I approached the gate, one of my security guards, a large but gentle man named Cale, moved to intercept me. "Sir, is there a problem?" he asked, his gaze flicking nervously toward the taxi. I just shook my head. "It's fine, Cale. Open the gate." He looked surprised, but did as he was told, and the heavy iron gate swung inward with a soft, hydraulic hiss. The taxi driver, a local who looked thoroughly bewildered by the unfolding drama, peered at me through his open window. I ignored him and walked to the passenger side. The man in the seat didn't look like my brother. Mark had always been immaculate. His suits were tailored, his hair was perfect, his smile was a weapon of confident charm. The man slumped in the taxi seat looked like a faded photograph of him. His expensive-looking shirt was wrinkled and stained. A dark stubble shadowed his gaunt cheeks, and his eyes, they were hollowed out, staring blankly at the cracked dashboard as if it held the secrets to the universe. He didn't even seem to register my presence until I tapped lightly on the window. He flinched, and his head slowly turned. When he saw me, a deep, painful blush crept up his neck. He couldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at my chin, his expression a miserable cocktail of shame and terror. "Mark," I said. It wasn't a question. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Alex!" he croaked, his voice raspy, as if he hadn't used it in days. My mother was right there beside me now, her hand on my arm. "You see?" she murmured. "Please, Alex, your own brother. He needs you." I looked from Mark's pathetic form back to my mother, her face a mask of desperate hope. I saw it all so clearly. This wasn't just a plea for shelter. This was an invasion. They wanted to set up camp in my life, to live off the fruits of the tree they had refused to water. They would drain me not just of money, but of the peace I had fought so hard to win. The answer was still no, but I couldn't just throw them back into the street, not with him looking like that. As much as I hated what he represented, he was still my brother. "You can't stay here," I said, my voice firm, directed at both of them. My mother's face began to fall. "But," she started. I held up a hand to stop her. "You cannot stay at the resort. This is a place for my guests, and it's my home. It is not yours." I took a deep breath. "But there's a small guest house in the town at the bottom of the hill. It's clean. I'll pay for you to stay there for 1 week. 1 week, and that's it. During that time, I'll give you enough money for 2 plane tickets to anywhere in the country and $10,000 to start over. After that week, you're on your own. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear from you. We go back to no contact. This is a one-time severance package. Do you understand?" My mother stared at me, her mind clearly calculating, weighing the offer. It wasn't the permanent life of luxury she had envisioned, but it was more than they had a minute ago. A glimmer of triumph lit her eyes. A foothold. That's all she needed. She was about to agree, about to launch into a performance of tearful gratitude, when Mark finally spoke. His voice was a dead, empty whisper, but it cut through the air like a shard of glass. "It's not enough," he said, still refusing to look at me. My mother shot him a panicked look. "Mark, be quiet," she hissed, but he ignored her. He slowly lifted his head, and for the first time his hollow eyes met mine. There was a raw, primal fear in them that I had never seen before. 10,000 isn't enough," he repeated, his voice shaking. "You don't understand, Alex. The people we owe money to, they aren't the bank. The money I lost, it wasn't mine." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" My mother grabbed his shoulder, trying to silence him. "He's just upset. He doesn't know what he's saying." But Mark shook her off, his gaze locked on mine. "You didn't tell him, did you, Mom?" he said, a note of hysteria creeping into his voice. "You didn't tell him about Petrov." The name Petrov landed like a stone in a silent pool. It sounded dangerous, foreign, and utterly out of place in our vocabulary of suburban squabbles and financial rivalries. I saw my mother's face drain of all color. The manipulative matriarch was gone, replaced by a woman gripped by genuine, unadulterated fear. "Who is Petrov?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. I looked at Mark, bypassing my mother entirely. "You will tell me right now who Petrov is." Mark finally broke. The story spilled out of him in a torrent of choked words and fragmented sentences. He hadn't just made a bad investment. He'd gotten involved with a loan shark, a brutal man named Petrov, who ran a shadow banking operation for the city's criminal underbelly. Mark, in his arrogance, thought he could outsmart him, using Petrov's money to play the market and pay him back with the profits. But the market had turned, and he'd lost everything. Not just his own money, not just my mother's money, but $250,000 of Petrov's money. The legal trouble wasn't a bad case. It was a desperate, failed attempt to embezzle funds from his firm to cover the debt, which had gotten him disbarred and ruined. "He wants his money, Alex," Mark whispered, his face ashen. "He gave me a deadline. It was yesterday. He said he would find us. He said there's nowhere we could run. That's why we came here. We thought you were rich. We thought you could just pay him." The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it nearly knocked me over. They hadn't just come here for a handout. They had come to hide, to use me and my resort as a shield, to drag me into the center of a violent, criminal mess they had created. They had led a monster to my door. I turned on my mother, my rage a white-hot inferno. "You brought this here? To my home? To my business? Were you ever going to tell me?" She cowered, unable to meet my eyes, muttering something about protecting me. "Protecting me?" I spat the words. "You put a target on my back. You risked everything I've ever built because you couldn't stand the thought of your precious golden boy facing the consequences of his actions." I spun back to Mark. "You did this. You fix it. My offer is off the table. Get in that taxi and get away from my property before I have you arrested for trespassing." "You can't," my mother shrieked. "They'll kill him." At that moment, my head of security, Kale, came running towards us, his phone pressed to his ear. His face was grim. "Sir, we have a problem. 2 men just arrived at the service entrance. They're not on any lists. They're asking for a guest named Mark Reyes. They look serious." My heart plummeted. They were already here. My mother let out a small, terrified whimper. Mark looked like he was about to pass out. I had a choice. I could turn them away, let my brother face the music he'd composed. Or I could let this poison seep into my sanctuary. All my life, I had been the one left to fend for myself. Now they were asking me to save them. Something inside me snapped, not into anger, but into a strange, icy clarity. I looked at my brother's terrified face, at my mother's pathetic desperation, and I saw them for what they were, 2 children who had never been forced to grow up. And I realized I wasn't just building a resort for 5 years. I was building myself into the man they never were. "Kyle," I said, my voice ringing with an authority I didn't know I possessed, "bring them to my office. No guards, just you. Escort them, and do not let them see my mother or brother." Kyle looked at me, surprised but nodded. "And get my family out of sight. Take them to the staff quarters in the back. Now." 20 minutes later, I was sitting behind my large teak desk, a glass of water in my hand, my heart beating a steady, calm rhythm. The 2 men Kyle brought in were exactly as I'd pictured, large, dressed in ill-fitting suits, with dead eyes that scanned the room for its value and its weaknesses. The one who seemed to be in charge introduced himself as Dmitri. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We are here for what is owed to Mr. Petrov. Your brother has been very foolish." "He has," I agreed, my voice even. "And for that foolishness, he has lost everything. His career, his family, his home. He has nothing left to give you." Dmitri smiled, a thin, unpleasant expression. "That is not our concern. A debt is a debt. If he cannot pay with money, he will pay with other assets." The threat was clear. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. "Let me propose a different arrangement. My brother is a liability. He is weak, foolish, and clearly terrible with money. He is of no use to you, dead or alive. I, on the other hand, am not." Dmitri raised an eyebrow. "I own this place. It is successful, profitable. I am offering to settle my brother's debt. In full. Dimitri's stony expression flickered with surprise. $250,000? He asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. I can have it wired to an account of your choosing within the hour, I said calmly. It would hurt. It would wipe out a significant portion of my liquid capital, but Azure Serenity would survive. I would survive. Dimitri looked at his partner, then back at me. And in return? In return, I said, my voice dropping, you will take the money and you will disappear. You will forget my brother's name. You will forget my name. You will forget this resort exists. If I ever see you or hear of you, or even suspect that you are anywhere near my life or my property again, I will use every resource I have, legal and otherwise, to dismantle Mr. Petrov's entire operation. Am I understood? We stared at each other for a long moment, a silent negotiation of power. He was judging whether my threat had teeth. He must have seen something in my eyes, the same fire that had built this place from nothing, because he finally gave a slow, deliberate nod. The account number? He said, pulling a piece of paper from his pocket. An hour later, the money was gone from my account, and so were Petrov's men. I walked to the staff quarters where my mother and brother were hiding. They looked up as I entered, their faces etched with fear and hope. It's done, I said flatly. The debt is paid. My mother burst into tears, rushing forward to hug me. Oh, thank you, Alex. I knew you would save us. I knew it. I put my hands up, stopping her cold. Don't, I said. This wasn't for you. I did this to protect my home, to get you out of my life permanently. I looked at Mark. The offer I made at the gate is back on the table. 1 week in the guest house in town, which I've already booked, $10,000 which I will give you in cash, 2 plane tickets to anywhere, and then we are finished, for good. That's what Mark just nodded, unable to speak, the shame and relief warring on his face. My mother opened her mouth to protest, to argue for more, but I cut her off. This is not a negotiation. You will take it, or you will leave with nothing. The choice is yours. For the first time, she saw the finality in my eyes. She simply nodded. I drove them into town myself, in silence. At the guest house, I handed Mark a thick envelope of cash and 2 prepaid tickets for a flight leaving the next morning. I didn't ask where they were going. I didn't care. As they got out of the car, my mother turned back to me one last time. Alex, she said, her voice small, I'm proud of what you've built here. The words I had craved for years now felt hollow, meaningless. It's too late for that, I said, and I drove away without looking back. As I drove up the winding road back to my resort, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I felt clean. I had bought my peace. It was expensive, but it was mine. The morning air still smelled of salt and jasmine. My sanctuary was safe. The silence I had earned was back, and this time I knew it was for good.